DJ PK, we're joined by Tim LaComb, Utah Jazz analyst for SCG Media. Tim, good morning.
Good morning. Good dreary morning.
Tim, I have been trying to figure out why the Jazz got fined $500,000 when Indiana only got fined $100,000, and why Washington and Sacramento didn't get fined at all. And I'm pretty sure Oklahoma City's been complaining because they want that draft pick.
So that would make you feel better if those other teams got fined?
But it would make more sense to me. I don't know if I'd feel better, but yes, it seems illogical to me that some teams are being singled out and other teams are obviously tanking or skating. So yes. But
a lot to unpack.
Well, what about what about the gambling sites? In-game gambling is a big deal, and coaches just suddenly benching guys can throw all of that out of kilter, and that could be a lot of bets and a lot of money. Hey, corporate partners have shared opinions about leagues forever, and these are two corporate partners. Why wouldn't they share their opinions too? I bet they hate it.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of so much of all that. First of all, I've been watching the NBA nightly for 6 years and watching teams roll through that. You obviously know what's going on. There's teams now that are championship level that have built their team, on this very thing. So, first, have the Jazz probably had some issues where they're playing, yes, but it's like being 16. I remember this vividly. Got my license. I went to Sears driving school. It was a thing. And you got to drive these new Camaros.
Well, sweet.
And, everybody else had to go schlep it at school, but I figured out a way because my stepdad had some trade, some barter stuff. I figured out a deal. So at 16, I took a 3-week course, and I remember one of the first tickets I ever got about maybe a week later. I was sitting on the side of the road watching cars just fly past me while I'm getting my ticket.
Oh, that always works, and then you point that out?
Yeah, and I was like, hey, that guy's going fast, right? And so,
you're the first teenager to get that.
And that's kind of the situation in the NBA. But then you throw in there, like you said, the accusations from OKC, who's got, a pick writing on it, and you've got, all of the gambling piece, which I actually think is the biggest thing that's causing heat for Adam Silver. I think he's absolutely 100% done a horrible thing bringing it in as prevalent. And, I happen to know some of those companies have, they have corporate roots, but there's some bad people in that whole world. And so for the NBA to get tied up in that has really limited, even his ability, because I think you've brought bad actors into the deal. And then, again, I kind of concur with Mark Cuban. I think you're either tanking or winning a championship. I mean, you're not tanking, but this idea that every year, every team's got a chance to win the thing. Everybody's on a different level of building, and it to me is, it is rich right now to come out at this point after so many years and decades have transpired using this. I mean, Tim Duncan was a product of the tank, let's be honest. So this has been going on for a long, long time, and now all of a sudden we're going to show indignation. And that's where I have my issue. That's where I have my issue with the league, with Adam Silver, with the way the Jazz are, being basically at this point singled out over and over again. It's just, it's rich.
And with that in mind, whoop-de-freaking-do. I mean, they have to do it because the league isn't going to do you any favors. It isn't going to help you get where you want to go. So you got to do what you got to do. And they're on the precipice of doing something really good here and adding a potential, I'm not going to go game changer, but definitely a rotation player who could develop into something. You never know how that works. They have to do it, and they've got to lose as many games as possible in the final just under 7 weeks of the season. And if they get fined, fine me. I can remember Derek Coleman when he was with New Jersey. They had a dress code when they traveled. You had to wear a suit or a tie or something, and here's the fine. And he totaled up the fine on 41 games, wrote him a check, and said, here you go. I ain't doing it. I'm going to dress casual on these flights. And so that's what he did. And that's the same thing with the Jazz. Because they're not going to do anything beyond the fines. So I don't care. Fine them. Fine away.
Yeah, that's just fine with us.
Oh, good.
I've lost a lot of trust in Silver. I think.
How about gold?
I think Silver is not gold. In fact, Silver is actually starting to rust.
And then rust never sleeps.
It's just these weird comments like he makes about. It's like he's trying to gamify the game. And look, man, the game's been on its own. There's a multitude of people that love the game. And, again, this bringing betting into the deal, saying, well, I don't know if we should have jump balls. And, I mean, all these things that they're not improving the game. You're just changing it for change's sake. I concur. I heard Jake Scott yesterday, my illustrious co-host, say, what good has he done in his time in the league that's been really, really like, wow, that was great. The in-season tournament is a gimmick, but I do think that it's gotten guys to play harder earlier in the year, and that's a plus. So, I mean, I'll give him part of that, but beyond it, I can't think of really one good thing the guy's done other than, put the league in some weird spots.
Signed really lucrative TV deals that have made all the owners rich and taken the pressure off of selling tickets. Yeah, richer.
But that's what a commissioner is supposed to do. I mean, that. Like my job, we had a clinic last night. So, the clinic went on. Good job, Tim. I mean, there's more to it than that. And again, it's how you go about doing it. I'm finding it so comical to watch college basketball right now and know who the powers were, particularly in the non-NIL world, but in the under the table, we're going to make things right world. And if you look around at the teams that are really struggling, that weren't struggling before, it's pretty obvious. I took great pleasure in watching Dana Altman at Oregon just absolutely get rifled last night at Minnesota because the money that was funneling through that place. And so really just start looking at the standings and say, oh, this team what happened? Oh, Mick Cronin's always angry, too. That might be part of his issue.
Yeah, that's why I like him.
Yeah, you wouldn't like him in person. Little pipsqueak.
You were in the coaching world for a long time, and I wanted to ask you a general coaching question. We've seen what happened with the Kansas State coach. He goes out and says, hey, half these guys are going to be here next year. And so he goes public, and he's really, really harsh. And you brought up Cronin, who's been harsh for a good while. And there's been a couple other coaches. Tad Boyle, after they got worked, a Colorado coach by Texas Tech, he just said we're embarrassed, blah, blah, blah. What level of coaching can you do, like whether it's in person to the team, to their face, or through the media? Because it seems like Tang is, he was 1-11 at the time when they fired him in the conference. I'm sure if he was 11-1 and they had lost the game and he blasted them, it probably would have been okay, but it wasn't, and he lost his job. So I'm just wondering, where's the line there, and are these guys crossing it?
I think the lines, and you've got this from local experience, if you're winning, that line's out there a ways. You can do a lot, say a lot. If you win, it's when those wins stop accumulating and maybe your activity, your actions start to create a little bit of angst because it's great when you got a crazy coach that's winning. There's nothing worse in the world to have. And really, in my mind, if you guys saw the clip with Mick Cronin last night, there was a student reporter asking him about the crowd. And the guy was so completely out of line. And it's so hard because what you got as administrators, you've got a room full of dudes that you're basically entrusting to this dude. And they start showing these signs of, like last night, that was absolutely insane behavior. There was a student reporter asked a question about the crowd. And Mick could have moved on. He answered the question, but then he had to make an aside. That's the dumbest question. So he instigates this dumbest question I've ever been asked. The student reporter says, "Well, I'll take that." Then he could end it again. And Mick says, "Well, you need to take it." And the guy's like, "I was just," and then he said, "Are you raising your voice at me?" And first of all, Mick's like 5'6". Like, I would walk up to Mick and just elbow him in the top of the head and he'd be done. But here he is, because he's got a whole scrum around him, he's going to take on the student reporter. So as an administrator, you're sitting there going, this doesn't play great. And then those things add up, you know. But I think more importantly, it's for Jerome, it was the 1 in 11 that caused the issue. And then they look for reasons, right?
Yeah.
But we're getting away from, I think we're going to get away from, because what a coach has to do now, it's like what Kevin Young's got to deal with right now. In the NBA, you have a guy go down, you go sign a 10-day or whatever. You know, he just had Richie go down, and now he's really got to figure out. He's got to dig in. So there's no time for any of that crap. You got to have a coach that's forward thinking, and so I would see some of those guys just naturally weed out, and some of that behavior again, it's not warranted. You know, you don't, when you guys go down to ask questions, and you ask a kind of a fun question about the opposing crowd. Obviously, you know, the coach is not going to love it, but at the same time, you don't expect Lord Farquaad to get off his horse and want to fight.
Wow. I mean, Penny Hardaway handled a very similar topic very differently after seeing the crowd in Logan. I mean, just for comparison, look how Mick handled it, right, and then look how Penny Hardaway handled it. Night and day. And Penny's not exactly Penny's not exactly stacking up the wins right now.
And he's not short.
Yeah. But, you know, he handled that completely differently.
No, he did. He was not, you know, he wasn't thrilled with the dunk, but that happens all the time. But when given, you know, talking about it, he's like, the loudest place I've ever been. Yeah. If you have an opportunity to go. And we all know that living out here.
So we've had a lot of games now that we're just seeing 80 and 90 points in a 40-minute college game. Used to be you had to hold people under 70 if you wanted to win regularly. Now it seems that number's moved to 75, maybe even 80. And a faster-paced game and more threes. So I get some of that. But I had a former coach say it's because of the transfer rule. Coaches can't coach as hard. You've really got to push guys to get them play defense. And he's like, you think Stu Morrill was up there hugging kids and loving them up at practice? He was screaming about defense. Rick Majerus, Dick Hunsaker at UVU, Roger Reed at BYU says, I can go to every school, and every school, and it's different now. Is that why we're seeing 99-92 and 99-94 in your mind?
I think partially transfers because, yeah, you have to be on your best behavior while still getting something out of those guys, and that's hard. And then compound that by giving them a lot of money. You know, in some instances, guys making more than the assistant coaches are trying to tell them how to get in a stance and do things. So I do believe there has been some of that slippage. But at the same time, we've got, as you said, faster paces, more threes. So that's going to definitely push it in that direction. But having to coach, or I guess getting to coach guys that, you know, are new to the system and making a lot of money, I think that's got to be a little bit of a learning curve on how to manage all that for guys that hadn't really coached professionally.
Yeah, and you wonder that Kevin Young was asked about all these transfers and Richie Saunders being a 4-year player and how unusual that is. But in Kevin Young's world, it's not unusual. The transfer portal is what he knows. And so it's like Whittingham talked about, you know, the adapt or die type thing. And that's if you want to be in coaching, if you want to stay in coaching, you simply have to accept it because it's simply not going away and deal with it as the present conditions exist. There's no other way.
Exactly. And, you know, Kevin's probably going to lean on some of his G League experience right now. you can never really count on much of a lineup in that instance. And I tell you what, he does a great job. Being at the game the other day, it was a minute in, when Richie's situation goes down, and they really had to scramble, and Colorado had just gotten embarrassed in Texas Tech, so Tad had them ready to go. I stopped by the hotel to say hello to the Buffalo staff the morning of the game, and I've never seen Tad so amped up because I think he'd put a lot into getting these guys ready to go after not playing well in Lubbock. So BYU faced the team, was really motivated. They pushed them all night, but big plays. Kevin just stayed with it, and it was a neat thing with Jimmer this weekend being back and being around kind of what's going on there. So a tough weekend, but I believe Kevin can, he'll do a really good job of putting their best foot forward, but the schedule is damning right now.
How much can be made up with energy and emotion? Guys who haven't been getting an opportunity suddenly have it, and they can cut loose, and they're not scouted, at least in the short run, so there's got to be a little bit of a surprise factor. How much of that figures in as you look at BYU and Arizona, and then also BYU down the line against Iowa State, Texas Tech, UCF, everybody else on the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you've got to hope for, and I think good thing I watch in BYU is they really have recruited good players. They've had a ton of injury. But that's the only thing you can do. That's your only option. So, you throw yourself into it. We had that experience, Jimmer's senior year with Brandon, and we only had, I think, 2 games left in the season, and we were fighting our tail off for a championship. We went out, played New Mexico after losing Brandon, got beat at the Marriott Center. It was a tough one, and then we were able to come back and beat Wyoming. But in that interim, we were able to get a couple rotations with different guys who haven't played a lot. James Anderson, who we got to see this weekend. Big game James was huge for us in that Wofford game. Logan Magnuson was another guy who didn't play a lot all year long. And he actually, in my mind, was the reason we beat Wofford. He made a couple threes when we were stuck. So, yeah, you go to your bench and you get those guys in a spot where they can, really have confidence in the things they're going to do. But it's not easy at all, and you'd certainly rather have a guy like Richie out there. And my prayers to him and his family. Honestly, one of the best kids and one of the best families that I had the opportunity to interact with in 20-plus years of coaching, recruiting, just phenomenal people. So prayers up for all of them, and he'll get through this because that's who he is.
We will leave it right there for now, Tim. As always, we appreciate your opinions on all things basketball.
All right. Hey, I did happen to stand in line with Mick at a event at Bishop Gorman High School one morning, and he looked so tired. He'd been out all night.
Oh, what are you insinuating?
What were you doing last night? He said, I was betting on the carriage races.
The carriage races.
The trotters you're talking about?
He's got a little personality. He's betting on those carriage races overseas in the middle of the night. So,
yeah, when I grew up, horse racing you're speaking of?
Yeah, carriage horse stuff.
Yeah, we called them trotters when I was growing up.
The trotters back in Jersey.
Yeah, that's what they were referenced versus the jock who's on the horse.
Did you guys have a highlight?
To this day, I do not understand it, but the results from highlight in Tijuana were always in the newspaper in San Diego.
And it's extremely crooked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Check out highlight. There was a highlight place in Newport, Rhode Island when I was out there engaged in 2 years of service. And the place was packed. Midday, weekday, highlight. Huh. Who knew? Who knew? Yeah.
Tim, we'll leave it right there. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Tim LaComb, Jazz analyst for SCG Media. Coming up, Bruce Pascoe, Arizona Wildcats basketball beat writer for the Arizona Daily Star at 9:05. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.